Welcome, builders of the internet! My name is Jessa and I work as a quantity surveyor in the construction industry, and today I thought I would talk about what might cause conflict in the industry and how conflicts can be avoided in the first place, particularly from a quantity surveyor's point of view. As always, you can find my sources in the description.
It's building on my mind.
Causes of conflict. In the construction industry, there are 5 main sources of disagreement. These are 1. When there is misunderstanding or errors in the contract documentation. 2. When there is unclear communication about costs. 3. Where conditions change. 4. Who the people involved in the project are. And 5. How consumers and the public react. The contract between the client and the contractor is so important in any project and will help determine who is responsible and who carries the risk in given situations. Sometimes there are amendments made, or maybe the wording has been misinterpreted, or even perhaps the design, the drawings and specifications that are usually included in the contract have errors or inconsistencies, which can result in disagreement and dispute. This links to the second source of conflict. Cost. Money is a sensitive topic in any industry, and construction is no exception to this. Sometimes there is miscommunication about what has been included in the agreed cost and who is responsible for bearing certain costs. If there is an excessive amount of changes that are being made throughout the project, this usually leads to a lot of price increases, and there is usually a lot of debate about whose fault this might be, which is directly related to the third source of disagreement, when conditions change. One example of a changing condition is if, say, there is unprecedented weather where it might rain excessively compared to usual. This isn't exactly any person's fault, but the contract could have a clause that says if there is particularly unusual weather, then one party has to bear responsibility and cost for this. Unusual or abnormal weather can be subjective and can be difficult to prove. Say it's difficult to say if it's the most rain you've ever experienced in years, if the rain and the weather hasn't actually happened yet. So these claims will usually come later, after the poor conditions have been experienced. Other things that could change include change to the government regulations, inflation, unprecedented site and ground conditions, availability of material supply, as well as the financial failure of a contractor. If the contractor becomes insolvent or bankrupt, this affects the fourth cause of dispute, where conflicts can happen because of the people who are involved in the project. It helps to do sufficient checks on the contractor's financial history before selecting them to do a job, which can then minimise the chance of picking somebody with bad financial management. However, there are other factors to do with the people which can also lead to conflict, such as the skills and competence of workers involved, and generally how well everyone gets along. The construction process is always a lot more enjoyable and runs smoother when different parties work with each other rather than against each other. The last main cause of conflict is how the consumer, say the client who is paying for the work to be done, or a member of the public reacts to the works. Sometimes the client might not be happy with what the outcome is, say it didn't come out exactly as expected, or the contractor's standard was subpar. This could lead to disagreement about whether the project is actually finished, and there might be some payment withheld until the client is happy, and as you know, money is a major source of conflict in construction. In terms of how the public reacts, sometimes neighbours or people working nearby might not be happy with the amount of noise, which can cause the progress of the works to slow down as the contractor tries to meet their demands. Sometimes if there isn't enough site security or signage, or just due to an unfortunate accident, a member of the public could get injured, and this might cause conflict if the contractor doesn't handle this appropriately. How to avoid conflict? As a quantity surveyor, we can have some input as to how efficiently the project goes, which I've split into 3 main categories: communication and management, record keeping, and good contract practice. Communication and management. Such a helpful way to help manage obstacles in any facet of life is having good and clear communication. In construction, this includes keeping everyone up to date on anything noteworthy that could have an impact on the project. When they do this as early as possible, it can prevent problems from happening in the first place, as well as providing confidence and trust in each professional's ability. It especially helps if each discipline, say the architect, the quantity surveyor, the engineers, the contractors, the client, and so on, if they all provide a point of contact to raise any queries with, and if they respond in a timely manner, which helps the construction process move so much more smoothly and efficiently. Everyone involved in the project should understand what their roles cover, keeping on top of their duties and being proactive by planning and managing any work or future work that they can foresee. Something the surveyor should also watch out for is their management of the client. By keeping on top of the client's intentions and objectives and having an understanding of what their limitations on construction knowledge are, you can keep them as involved as is appropriate. If the client is willing to take on some responsibility for risky elements of the project, then making sure that they are aware of the outcomes should these risks come to light is helpful. It is also beneficial having easy ways to share information with each other, say Dropbox for example, to make sure that everyone can have access to relevant information and make informed decisions based on this. Site visits throughout the construction phase can also help make sure that everyone is informed about what is happening, where they can actually see firsthand by being on site and keep track of whether everything is going to plan, which leads on to the second way to avoid conflict. Record keeping. If everyone keeps a record of when meetings are, what happens during the meetings, and any important lines of communication received, say, via email and so on, then a lot of disputes can be resolved retrospectively and objectively by looking back at the evidence and records. In particular, the contractor should keep track of the labour, plant, machinery and materials used for the project, as well as having regular progress reports that note activities happening on site, the cost, the progress and the quality. When these are regularly distributed amongst the whole team, then everyone can be kept in the loop of what is going on, which is so important for the overall project success. Contract practice. The final way to reduce potential conflict that I'll talk about today is to do with the contract, which I mentioned earlier as one of the 5 main sources of conflict within the industry. Standard templates are used a lot in the construction industry, which helps with consistency and means that there is a better chance that everyone has a working understanding of the clauses that are already in there. However, it's important to note that each project is unique and has its own particular set of nuances and special circumstances, so those who are involved need to appreciate and recognise the specific conditions that each project brings. Sometimes quantity surveyors will have input on drafting the contract, so making sure that there are sufficient clauses and details of the project's circumstances, as well as documentation about potential risks in the project, can help set out a strategy for dealing with these risks in the future. Also, by having a clear understanding of when things need to happen throughout the project, say with a contract programme or with a key payment schedule, this can help reduce the chance of conflict. The contractors and clients' quantity surveyors should keep track of when applications for payment need to be sent over, as well as how much time they have to evaluate these applications before letting the client know how much they owe for the services up to that point. Late payments can be really detrimental to some businesses and can actually put some companies in trouble. So as I mentioned earlier, before entering into a contract with a contractor, it is worth doing background checks on their financial data and making sure that there are sufficient insurance policies in place should something go wrong. Thanks for watching this video. There are many opportunities for conflict within the construction industry, so setting good practices and precedents from the get-go can be so helpful for minimising how many arguments happen later. If everyone works cooperatively and communicates well, this can really help the efficiency and overall enjoyability of the project. For more content to do with quantity surveying, construction, sustainability and mental health, feel free to check out my other videos. But that's all I have to say for now. I hope it helped build on your mind.
Thanks for watching this channel, it's building on my mind. Check out my other videos, but first hit the bell and comment, like, subscribe. Please, everybody else with you.